Hello, everybody. It is Tuesday. It's 11 o'clock, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to part 4 of CER's Action Series. Gosh, I actually like the music in the background better. It's too bad we couldn't make it like a live show where we have that going on. I'm Jeannie Allen, the CEO and founder of the Center for Education Reform, and we are just so delighted to be able to share with you during this strange, unusual, and tragic time some positive, great news stories about people educating our kids. Could I have the big screen, please, Tech? So first, I just want to kind of give you guys a couple of thoughts and bring you up to date about where we are, and then go to our guests. First, as I said, this is the 4th in our action series. Our action series also includes a really cool report I hope you've seen that we issued last week called The Future of School. Since that report was issued, we are pleased that the federal government delivered about $13 billion to states to help develop innovative plans so that they could use those money to the impact of kids, and we have to make sure that's the case. We've got some great recommendations in our paper, as I'm sure you all have great recommendations on how to do that. And we want to hear from you about what we should be telling our policymakers, how to spend those $13 billion, as well as the $300 million just announced yesterday by the Education Secretary that's reserved for states to propose innovative solutions. One way we think would be best to accomplish that work for kids is to actually drive those funds directly to the schools, educating the students, no matter where they are. And I think we all agree it's time to think and act boldly. Zip codes have become pretty irrelevant to our education, to our work, and they are producing enormous inequities and disparities. So we're saying let every child carry a virtual backpack. And we'd love you to know more about that and join us on our virtual backpack crusade. And you can read about it online at edreform.com, Future of School Policy. Again, we also want to know what you think, what you know, what we should be covering, who we should be talking to, what great stories we're missing. Write us at espresso.com. That's actually like the drink, but with ED in front, like the coffee. And speaking of which, that is our revamped blog area, and we welcome submissions from you all about meaningful topics. So that's my update. And we are doing our part to try to bring you great stuff. So on to our guests. Before we bring them on, let me just tell you a little bit about them and what you're going to be seeing and hearing. Today you'll be meeting the fabulous Patricia Brantley, Pat, CEO of Friendship Public Charter Schools. Pat is the founding partner of our, sorry, I still have a landline. Pat is the founding partner, it's probably spam or somebody. Of course, as we know it. Hopefully, if it was a survey, I should have picked it up and told them what I think. She oversees all operations at Friendship, has secured more than $95 million in public and private funding, and affected cohesion among 16 campuses, including some amazing professional development stuff she'll tell you about. But it is, she spearheaded the takeover of Washington's first multi-campus charter management group. They are located in a few other states through their organizations, and they are joined by, Pat will be joined today by 2 other stellar principals from Friendship Woodbridge International, Felicia Owo and Morrise Harbour. Can't wait to see you, Morrise, Principal, Friendship Chamberlain Elementary and Middle. Then we're going to be bringing on Antonio Roca, Managing Director of Academica Virtual Education. You'll hear more about Antonio and their fabulous national and international work that's going on. And until then, let's bring in Pat to start our conversation off. So Patricia Brantley is coming to us from Washington, D.C. as well. Good morning, Pat. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing really well. I'm so excited to see you today and to talk about what we're doing. When you gave a little bit of my bio, you know, the one thing that came to my head is that what's most important is that I am the child of a public school teacher turned lawyer because she felt like she couldn't do enough for her kids while they were in school. And my mother was a teacher in the Newark Public Schools, Newark, New Jersey. And I think it is my experience as a student of Newark schools, a person who needed to see educational option that really put me in the seat that I am in today, more so than anything that's in my bio, is a real understanding of what our families are going through and what our families need to make sure they have access to opportunity. So thank you for having me. I truly appreciate it.
I'm so glad you're here. And, when we talked a little bit in preparation for this, I talked to you a little bit about how people have been asking about access and about how you're reaching everybody. And you shared with me a story, and I wonder if you'll just repeat it before we really jump into the nitty gritty. And I said, people were concerned, have been writing in all of our series about, but what about those we can't reach? And you said something like, well, there's 23, and here's why.
That's right.
And I was fascinated by that, although I shouldn't be, because you at Friendship, and I just have to tell everybody out there, and I have to brag on Friendship for a minute, because it was one of the first charters I ever attended or visited in a very poor, actually 1-0 section of DC with lots of gangs and other stuff around it. And I showed up at that campus and watched students by your founder, Donald Hentz, be left outside. And I remember going inside and saying, why are they outside? And he said, they were late. I said, they were late? You're not going to let them in? He goes, you watch, in a couple weeks, they won't be late. So you guys have always had your hand on the pulse of what's happening in your community. So tell us why, how, and about those 23 or so kids.
So as you know, we serve thousands of students every day from 3 years old through 12th grade. We have a large and growing alumni base, 3,000 alumni as of right now. What we know is that our students value learning, their families value learning, and they want to engage. So when I think about the thousands of students, I asked one of our principals who'll come on later, Felicia Owo, what's happening? We're so worried. There are students that aren't taking advantage of it. And she goes, no, we've got 23 students that we haven't heard from. And as of now, we've heard from half of those. What we're finding is that it's not that students don't want to engage. It is not that they are cut out of opportunity because their families are struggling or because, maybe they don't have the resources or they're poor. Our families connect if we provide them with the tools to do so. Our families take advantage of the schools that we have for them. When I think about the few students who haven't, let me tell you some of their stories. We have a family that said, okay, the mother and the father, both hourly workers in the food service industry, they lost their jobs, right? They lost their jobs, but they have a young person in their home who is working. He's working, he's doing deliveries, and so they said he won't be in class during the day. And what happens with that student? He's turning his homework in every night, right? So he's doing it. Our challenge as educators is to figure out how are we going to access those students. So when people say to us, oh, they want low tech, they want whatever, no, our families want access. So every piece of curriculum that we have, you're gonna get it. You're gonna get it in hard copy, you're going to get it in digital. You're going to have a way to interact with us because that's our responsibility. We have other families that, a family member in the household got sick. Those families had to move to someone else's, a student had to move to someone else's couch. What are we finding? They still need interaction with their classmates. And so for us, the most important thing isn't whether or not our families, this idea in the world that our families, either aren't invested in education or don't want it. It is our responsibility to provide the access that they need, however they can take advantage of it. And we're doing that. In just a few days, we distributed thousands of devices to families. Computers, hotspots, tablets. I'm going to have to just give a quick shout out. I went to visit an Academica school in Miami. You sent me, Jeannie, actually, Slam Academy. And I'm visiting the school and thinking about sports management and all that they do and how well that they do it. Thinking about Pitbull because, hey, maybe he would have shown up. I know he supports the school. And I walk into a library and I see a bunch of students on tablets. And they are part of a Verizon Innovative Learning program called VILS. And I thought, wait a minute, how do we get all of our middle school students, to have the devices that they need? And we were already doing some. Our founder had set us up to make sure that we had a lot of technology in our schools, but not necessarily tablets that students can take home. Mm-hmm. And by the time I returned home to DC, it turned out that Verizon was talking to us about establishing a VILS program last year, which we did, all of our middle school students, 6th to 8th grade. And so what I realized is that Verizon was setting us up for a future that we did not know that we were going to encounter in just a few months.
Interesting.
And when I talked to our principals, and I hope Felicia Owo, who's coming on later, will talk about it, I said, how did that help us? And she's like, our students don't need to learn how to interact with their teachers using technology. Because we had the VILS program, they already knew how to use devices to access education. Right. And so, I feel like Friendship was always a front runner in the technology piece. Our founder, Donald Hentz, used to say to me when we only had, about 2,500 students about 10 years ago, he would say, well, we have 2,500 students, but we've got 4,000 laptops. And I would say, what do we need those for? And you know what? He was a man beyond his time. He is a man beyond his time, and understood that across the world, people that have their children in their homes with computers, accessing, entertainment, absolutely, but certainly learning and museums and things that we hadn't even thought about. And our children have the opportunity to do that right now, or certainly our middle school students. But one thing that Verizon program did to us is that we thought, why only middle school? And so across Friendship, going down in grades, we have students that already had access to devices. But what's true, that wasn't every student. Mm-hmm. And within a couple of days of knowing that we were going to have to close school, what we thought at the time would be just for a few weeks, what we now know could be into the next school year, maybe longer, is that within a few days, we were able to take every device that we have and deploy it out to students. Thousands of students. We were able to bring teachers onto a platform where we trained them, where they were able to deliver to their students. We like saying we did that without a bailout. That schools across the country have risen to the challenge and did it without a bailout. Now, don't get me wrong. Do we need a bailout? Absolutely. Do we need more resources? Yes. Were we able to get devices down to students who are into kindergarten? Yes. But do we have programs for students that are in preschool and pre-K? We absolutely do. What more could we do if we had tablets for every student? We could do a lot more. But students do have devices in their homes. Students have hotspots. What more could we do if every child had true broadband citywide?
Everywhere.
It would be incredible.
Yeah,
right?
No, exactly. No, and it's interesting. And again, this is a time for hope and optimism and advocacy of all of that. But why are we spending money on schools that are closed? Right? And that's our problem. So I want to see those schools that are closed by no misfortune of their own or no cause of their own, to look at your examples and talk about, and go, why can't we do this? Of course we can do this. Of course we bring it. And again, you're not sitting there in communities where everyone's wealthy. And I think that's the really important part is talk about the effective school kind of focus that you have. Why are students engaged even now?
The fact of the matter is that students want to be engaged. At the beginning, when we said, okay, we're going to have to close, we were close to spring break, so we went right to spring break. 4 or 5 days after spring break, we bring everyone back onto these virtual platforms. You know what we heard from teachers and from students? I missed my kids. I missed my teachers. I missed my friends. They didn't just miss seeing them in the sort of, and talking about social things, and they missed talking about their classwork. When I think about the training and the PD that we do, of course, we've done PD. We use Edmentum in some of our programs. We did professional development on that. We did professional development on using lots of software tools. You know what else is important in professional development? The Socratic method. How do you get students to talk with each other, to engage with each other? So what's working? What's working is remembering what great teaching is. Great teaching isn't just using technology tools. Great teaching is knowing that I have to deliver and help kids master objectives and content, master a standard. And even if I'm online, I need to check in to see that John and Sarah, Elizabeth, that are they actually mastering this content? I don't know if we're able to show it today, but we'll drop a link for people. But Friendship has done virtual classroom tours, and you can see 4-year-olds sounding out words and letting their teacher know whether or not they understand how to spell those words. And we can check on that. And so what I would say is working.
You check on that? So tell us how, but give me a specific.
Absolutely. So the same way that we're on, the same way that we're on right now. And I know that I've got a lesson on phonics. I know that I'm doing letter sounds. And I say, Jeannie and Felicia and Morrise, I'm putting up my whiteboard. I want you to look at it. Can you help me spell this word? And you're able to engage with me in real time and let me know that you know how to do that lesson. And that's 3 and 4-year-olds. Think about it when we get to 5th, 6th, 7th grade, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders. We're continuing to prepare students to take an advanced placement test. Right. So you could actually see, if you look at our virtual tours, one of our finest master teachers, his name is Eric Blood, where he is talking to students about doing a document-based inquiry, right? How can you look at these documents and come up with a thesis around how, what's being framed? Fascinating stuff, critically important, right? When people think about not having education right now, when they think about it because, well, if we can't give all the kids, what they need, there's no equity, let's not do it. I want you to understand something about the Friendship students. They want to learn, right? They're looking to us to learn, but they also can help us think about how we deliver education. So I have a young man, his name is Jarrell King. He was accepted to Yale. He's going to be at Yale in the fall. He is a Gates Scholar. If we decided not to teach during this period, he would have ended his, let's say, math instruction, end of February, March, and then he'd wind up at Yale in September, missing months of instruction, right? Where's the equity in not preparing him to go on to the next part of his life? Right? Where's the equity in not continuing to provide guidance counseling, help with, financial aid forms, help with, just getting to the next phase of life?
No, it's not there.
It's not there. What we know is that, in communities that may struggle, that kids need more time. If you think about almost every successful charter school, a longer school day, a longer school year, right? How do we take away time and say we're not going to educate during this period? Right. It's just not possible, right? It is not only that we're going to educate now, it is that we're going to take our lessons learned from now and add hours to every week in school. Because what we know right now is that our kids, without us, can go on at 8 o'clock at night. They can go on Saturday. They can view a lesson that we might have done during the day. They can learn, and they are doing it. I have schools, I had to say to the principal, like, are you serious? That said, I was on one of their morning announcements, and it was a Friday, and they're like, remember, tomorrow you have Saturday school. I'm like, you're still doing Saturday school? And they're like, yes, absolutely.
Have that autonomy.
Our principals have that autonomy, yes.
Let's do this. There are a bunch of questions come in, which is awesome. And I want to make sure we show that video clip. But I'm going to throw out a couple of questions for you to think about while we show that video clip, and Ted. And one of them you're addressing about mastery, modifying your grading to include, completion and mastery. So how is accountability working is one of them that's happening. How do you see this, shifting? And maybe Morrise or Felicia want to talk about this. How do you see this shifting in the future? And, growth, reaching kids and growth, all of some things you're talking about. And I think all these questions we're logging, and if we don't get to them, we will continue to answer them, if not now, but later. But let's go ahead and go to that video if we can. And really, Pat, as it's queuing up, I think the question here is, how do you make sure the students that are struggling with IEPs or whatever are getting that critical interaction? Are there other ways that you, in a dashboard or whatever, that you're evaluating what they're doing?
So we're going to make this connect to what we know. So it started in 8 degrees in Washington, D.C. Distance can never be what? Starts with an N. Negative? Negative, thank you. So either model would work, and especially because it did not tell you how to model. It didn't tell you how to model it. It just says what was the temperature change. So the temperature change was 11 degrees. Do we have any questions on the do now? All right. All right, great job. We're going to go ahead and transition to our skill drill. Are there any questions about Tuesday's do now? Skill drill, excuse me. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start the timer. You'll have 3 minutes. Please be prepared to share. See, everyone's head is down, which means they're looking at their paper. That's what I love to see. All right, guys, that was your time. So remember I said that when Sanaya jumps on, we were going to go back and just shout her out. Sanaya, you were the student of the day. Thank you so much, because I know you had a lot of technology issues last week, but you were resilient and you were able to join us. So great job, sweetheart, okay?
Yeah.
So cool. And which teacher was that?
That's Ashley Royal, excellent teacher. And what you didn't see in Ashley Royal's class, but in many of our classes, is that there are co-teachers to support students with special needs as well. So
and you mentioned that, and let's bring in Morrise and everybody to talk about the rest of this. But you'd mentioned that to me too when I talked to you about how are you reaching students with the difficulty. You said your resource teachers, like you haven't laid anybody off, you still have your resource teachers. And so there are people, hi Felicia and Morrise, and there are people who are out there talking to everybody. So let's bring them into the conversation. It's great to see you all. How do you want to start? Morrise, you want to tell us, you've been with Friendship a long time, and I know all the principles of Friendship are stellar. But why don't you start and tell us what you're seeing in terms of these biggest challenges and how you're overcoming them, and what it means for you and your school post-COVID.
Yeah, I think when you think about charters and you think about schools, you think about innovation. And I think that, fortunately, given this pandemic, we've been able to really be innovative around the things that we're doing in terms of providing a sound, or continuing to provide a sound education to our students and families. Mm-hmm. One of the questions about what we do to support our students with IEPs, this platform has allowed us to, especially in our inclusion settings, to really give that individualized instruction that students are needing, outside of the kind of, sometimes the chaos or the distractions of their peers. So now I can work with a group of students in a more isolated way, and really target where their deficiencies are. So I think that that's been helpful. A lot of what I'm seeing is a very heightened or increased level of engagement from some of the students that, during the school day, they may not have been as, engaged, but this platform has allowed them to really be able to to participate a little more, to get their questions answered a little more, because you have that opportunity to put questions in the chat, and teachers can now direct their answers toward that particular student. You also have opportunities where a lot of the data, given the platforms that we use, such as Zoom, such as Nearpod, it allows us to give real-time data to the students, so they become more engaged, because I know, by the end of that 30-minute time frame that I'm with a particular teacher in a content area, I'll be able to get an idea of where I stand in terms of my understanding of the standard that's being taught. From a parent-student perspective, I think because we're now opening ourselves up to parents to see what's going on in the classroom from a day-to-day basis, you get a lot more buy-in and support from parents, just around making sure that they are logging in and that they are in class and that assignments are being handed in. So overall, I mean, we've taken advantage of the resources that Friendship has been able to provide us, such as, I know Pat mentioned the VILS program. Again, that has been, in my opinion, very cutting edge and innovative, because it allowed our students to already be comfortable with using technology to kind of help with their instructional development. So,
and someone was asking earlier kind of how you get those resources. So you all get money directly to the building in Washington, D.C. The charters get a substantial, better equity than most states, right?
Right.
And then foundation funding, obviously.
Yeah.
And so you had all that within your means. Pat said it would be great to have more, but you had that at least within your means to reach people, right?
Exactly.
Let me ask you a question. I know we're talking about, for the most part, urban schools. The Friendship Foundation, obviously unrelated directly, Maurice, to your leadership as a principal, has the Arkansas school, but do you or Felicia also want to address the issue of rural students and reaching rural students, because this keeps coming up? And we know there's widespread availability of hotspots if there's money. There's a huge effort right now in DC, which we all are supporting, to obviously lift all the bandwidth restrictions and make it ubiquitous. Again, that the idea of a virtual backpack, everyone should have a device and a spot, basically, if you will. It should be paid for, essentially. But you want to tackle, like, what do you do if you don't have those things?
Well, I think it's important that everyone understand that we are essentially missing out on an opportunity to kind of close that achievement gap, that equity gap that we see in education, especially when you have schools in cities where, they're well-resourced versus schools in those rural areas. And I think that a lot of advocacy around and just support around just understanding that, there needs to be a level playing field no matter where a child goes to school. And I think schools that are without those resources, I think it needs to become a collaborative effort to kind of bring those resources to that particular environment. And in a lot of ways, we started out with just our middle school students having access to technology, but we shared that technology throughout the school. And I think that that's something that, that has been beneficial, because we've been able to present to people who have wanted to invest in technology for Friendship to say, look, these are the things that we're doing with our actual technology. And if we had more, we could do so much more. I think.
Yeah. So I apologize. So Felicia, let me bring you into this. Tell us, first of all, exactly what you're doing differently to reach students and to ensure not just that you're reaching them, they're being educated over at Woodridge. And what grade levels are you, by the way, Felicia, at Woodridge?
Pre-K through 8th grade, so pre-K 3-year-olds through 8th grade.
Okay, great. And Maurice, you are middle and high school at Chamberlain, one of the schools. So what are you doing specifically? And then also, what are you going to continue to do after COVID is one of the big questions. I think that's great coming from the audience.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're doing specifically, and I would echo the idea of innovation, right, is to being really intentional about how we're responding to the needs of students and also families. And so I think one thing that is has been really exciting during this period of time is family engagement, but putting the families within the classroom ecology, right? Because normally in the classroom, you have the teacher and the student relationship. Right. Sometimes the student is at the center, sometimes the teacher's at the center, depending on, you know, the instructional platform and the expectations for learning. But now we have the family, right? That is a critical component, that parent. And so we're reaching out to parents. We're creating opportunities for parents to find out what's happening in the classroom. We're creating opportunities for like professional learning communities of parents where teachers are letting parents know what are the topics that are going to be covered this week. Do you have any questions about this topic? Let's have some dialogue about what is happening in the classroom. So if your child has a question and you want to be able to answer it, you feel empowered, right? You know what the learning scope and sequence is. So I think that parent inclusion piece has been the most instrumental and the most dynamic because it's something that we don't often think about, you know, having to engage them in the same way we might engage their student, right?
Are they seeing more, do you think, education? Are they
Yeah.
in your school elsewhere? Are they like, what? You do what? Like, is it new for them?
There's a feeling of that, right? There's some, especially in the math, right? This idea of like new math and how math is taught versus how math was taught when we were, you know, we were all in school. And so there's a little bit of like, I can't believe this is what's happening, and a sense of greater appreciation for education and for teachers. Absolutely. But there's also, you know, just, oh, I remember doing this when I was in school. Right. Oh, I get this. Oh, this isn't as hard as I thought. Right. And so some of those, you know, I would say like low self-efficacy feelings that parents sometimes have about being able to help their kids, they're more confident, they're more empowered, they're more excited about what's happening in the classroom because the classroom is now their living room or their bedroom or, you know, somewhere else in the house. So that has been tremendously exciting. I think something else that is noteworthy is just the teacher engagement and innovation and professional development. And so not only are we providing like great professional development opportunities for teachers, but teachers are taking it upon themselves to reach out to teachers they normally would not. So for instance, they're creating their own sort of authentic professional learning communities. And so my elementary teachers are reaching out to my middle school teachers to say, hey, I saw that you did this activity in your virtual class. Like, how can I do this too with my pre-K4 scholar? Or vice versa. My middle school teachers are reaching out to their colleagues in the elementary and saying, oh, I realized how engaging your lesson was and how you embedded that video and you did a flipped classroom model and you had the kids watch the video and then you came on. Like, how did you do that in your classroom? And so that dialogue that sometimes we don't always see across the academies is happening in really authentic ways that's coming directly from the teacher.
So the model, if people are out there thinking about sort of most people in traditional school districts, the model would be the same of different schools in a district reaching out and learning about what people are doing. You guys are making it more accessible, if you will, because of this point in time, right? I mean, that's actually a really interesting idea I never thought about, is what if we could get school leaders and educators in each of the different schools in outside of those silos, right? And so that's what it sounds like you're really doing. What did you do in your classrooms before this happened, principals, that it was an easy pickup for the students at home? Pat was saying you've always used technology. Donald Hens, the founder, was a little ahead of the curve. You guys have implemented it. But what specifically was different in your classroom? What were you using? Were you using any device? Was there specific programs, or did it depend?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the video of the teacher that you saw, Mrs. Rural, is actually a math teacher on my campus, and she is a phenomenal educator. So to use her as an example, we were already using VILs in our 6th through 8th grade in our middle school classroom. So when kids took the iPads home, which they were already doing, and now they're using it for instruction, was a really quick pickup. We were already using Flipgrid.
I'm sorry, define.
A Verizon Innovation Learning.
And that is a software program?
Yeah, so VILS is the partnership with Verizon. Right. And so every student gets the iPad, and then on the iPad, they also get 5 gigs of data. Now, because of the school closure, they're up to 10 gigs of data, right? So students have more data at home. So even if they don't have Wi-Fi at home, they could still engage in learning using the Verizon iPads. And then Verizon also provides professional development for teachers, like how to utilize the technology for instruction, all the educational tech apps. There's so many out there, right? So how to use them meaningfully, Google Classroom, Nearpod, Flipgrid, a plethora of them. And so they provide all of that training. And so that's something that we were already doing. So it's an easy sort of shift for teachers and then also for students. In our lower classrooms, we had Chromebooks in every classroom, like one-to-one carts in the classroom. So students were already using Chromebooks. In our pre-K3 and pre-K4 classroom, we had iPads because for them, you know, digitally and development appropriately, it makes more sense for them to be able to touch their screen and move it around versus type on a keyboard. And so now that these devices that they were already utilizing in the classroom are going home, that sort of learning curve for them is not as high. Teachers were also utilizing like document cameras and things like that to project information. Some teachers were projecting information to the Promethean boards from their iPhones and other devices, right? They were already utilizing video technology in their lessons. They were already having kids, you know, take virtual tours and go online and research information and use that information to, like, you know, for meaningful ways, current events. So they were already engaging in technology for educational purposes, and that helped with the transition to them doing that just at home. Right?
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And Pat, do you want to weigh in here about sort of the broader issue? And again, Morrise, jump in as well. So here you were able to shift. You've been able to reach parents. What does life look like after COVID? And what do you say, pause, second question, what do you say and how do you help schools that are having a hard time reaching parents? And does it have to do with school culture? You know, can this change?
So, you know, something important that Principal Owo-Grant said, which had to do with the ecology of school and of the classroom. And you think about that word ecology, the interaction between people and their environment. And we think of it as, you know, the ecology of schools had been teacher in the center, students around the teacher, parents standing on the outside. Today, in our world of virtual learning, parents and students are at the center. And the teacher is outside figuring out how to get into that home, how to get access, what do students most need. Mm-hmm. You know, we are never going back. When I talk to our principals, I talk to our academic team about the creation of curriculum. When we create curriculum going forward, it will always be with an idea toward what is the curriculum for parents? What are our office hours for families? How do we bring them into the learning? We've always known that the most engaged schools, meaning with the most parent engagement, are schools that do better.
Yeah.
But were we actually set up to help those parents understand this is what our learning looks like this week? This is what the objectives are. So when you go out on the weekend, when you're talking to your kids across your meals, what are you doing? We are going to prominently put the student and the parent, the family at the center, and we're going to change ourselves to work around them. That means, yes, giving them tools and devices so that when that family decides they want to access learning, they can. That means giving families understanding so that when they are counting out their groceries or gardening or whatever, that they can talk to their students about how it connects to the learning that they're doing. What post-COVID-19 looks like is about access, but not just access for the student, access for the family into our learning objectives. It is about making sure that teachers can continue to interact with each other. I am so proud that nearly all of our professional development is being delivered teacher to teacher, not outside consultants. Right. We've got Google Guru for Google Classroom at our Tech Prep campus. We've got a Zoom Guru. I can shout out Lenora Felder or Douglas Nazorski. Like, these are friendship people who have been with us for a long time that are helping their colleagues engage. That is what it will look like, because now they don't need to wait for the bureaucracy to connect them. they can connect to each other, right? In one of the CER virtual sessions, someone said that they have Zoom rooms of master teachers, right? Like we said, oh, this is fantastic. We're going to pick up this idea and run with it. It doesn't matter that you're inside Friendship. We are learning from our colleagues. The district system is headed by Louis Farabee. We are learning from DCPS. We are learning from KIP. We are learning from Academica. We are learning from Charter School USA. That is what it looks like. I've said to people, we have to gigify education, right? Our children are going to go out in the world where they could decide, I'm going to take this job, I'm going to deliver this. They are in the world of Uber. They are in the world of Amazon Fresh. You know, someone asked me, I moved recently, they said, you're moving to that part of town. You know, it's an under-resourced part of town. There aren't that many grocery stores. And I said, when was the last time I was in a grocery store? You know, I can access things and have them delivered to me. Our children do not have to worry. What Charter's proved, you can be stuck in a neighborhood where maybe your school of right wasn't that great. Charters blew that up, right? You now can access a great school, a charter school, citywide in DC, no matter where you live.
Right.
We have the opportunity to take what's happened in COVID-19 and say, you can now access education no matter where you are, no matter when you are, right? And you can choose it. That's what I hope that we are taking away from this period. And obviously not just Friendship, but that our children get that opportunity no matter where they are in the country, no matter where they are during the week, no matter where they are during the time of day. If you're waking up at 4 a.m. and you just want to hit that math problem, you're able to do that. So that's what's important.
And how do we keep, as we start, this is fantastic. And there's hundreds of people watching and participating with us. And I'm sorry we can't get to everyone's questions, but I'm trying to weed them in best I can. And we'll get to you all later. But Morrise and Felicia, kind of last word on this, and stay on while we bring on our next guest too for a few minutes. But first, what do you have now that allows you to do what you're doing in the construct of your school? And what would you recommend to not just other schools, but other policy people, anyone who could impact students, that they should do during this time?
Well, I just want to echo what Pat and Felicia spoke about in terms of engagement and just being transparent with parents. But I think, you know, to specifically speak about what we would want, just continue to push the envelope around innovation, continue to be supportive with our teachers and the way in which they want to provide an educational service to our students and our families. I think that's probably at the top of my list in terms of allowing teachers to just continue to grow as professionals, continue to support their thought process along the lines of innovation. And I think, you know, with charters, it's important that we hold true to that because that's essentially what we're rooted in, is innovation and just thinking outside of that box.
No, thank you for that. And Felicia, do parents need training themselves in this new day and age? How do we engage and make sure that parents out there, no matter where they are, not only interfacing, but maybe demanding what you're given from their own schools right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Parents do need a level of training and understanding, you know, around what this digital learning platform and world looks like, right? And also to have a voice. So not just the training is put upon them, but to be a part of that dialogue and to be a part of that training. And so when something is rolled out, it really is from the perspective of a parent and based on what they need. Because I think sometimes we make assumptions about what parents can or cannot do. You know, sometimes they're unattended, right? And, you know, well-willed, but we do make assumptions based on whatever stereotypes or statistics or, you know, understandings of parent engagement. And this situation has caused us to really dispel that, right? And then when I also think about the other question you asked around like policymakers, like what can we say to policymakers or to folks who are, you know, providing fund and information for educational institutions, let educators do the work. Let us make the decisions. Let's teachers, school leaders, CMOs, those that are on the front lines, these essential workers in a sense, right? Even though we're not physically going into the school building, we're all still working. Because what we see now is that the innovation that's happening, the creative ideas, the way that we have shifted so beautifully, I believe, in education to supporting kids with distance learning came from the schools. Some funding and money has come from other entities, right? But it wasn't a mandate that was put upon us about how to do school well. And I think before this, there are a lot of mandates put upon us about how to do school well. And so I'm hoping that when we come out of this, those that are on the front lines in the classrooms, teaching kids, deciding or able to decide what happens with education moving forward in the reform efforts.
Yeah, it's that flexibility. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's bring in Antonio Roca from Academica to join us just for a couple minutes while you're all on before we give him his own day in the sun. Good morning. Welcome, Antonio.
Invitation. Oh.
You're welcome. Must be kind of fun to hear your schools talked about as models for friendship. Pat, anything you want to tell Antonio, or Antonio, anything you want to comment on about what you've heard?
Yeah, well, Pat, a fantastic presentation. Congratulations to what you and your team at Friendship are doing. Next time that I'm in DC, I'm going to come and visit you personally. I think that Pat said a couple of remarkable things. By the way, I'm also a public school student that turned lawyer to try to figure out how best to make education equitable. And we do have a responsibility to provide access to all students and not take the easy way out, which I think some school districts have done by just deciding that because they can't reach everyone, they're going to reach no one. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us to do exactly what Pat says, is to provide solutions and in this historic time, right? So congratulations, Pat, to you and your team.
Thank you. I'll say a final word, and I know you'll agree with me, Antonio. We have the opportunity now to allow all of our stakeholders to be part of the co-creation of education. Our teachers are helping us co-create and deliver. Our families are helping us co-create what works best for their students. It is families that are telling us, I've got multiple kids. Here's how I need you to deliver education to me. I need you to have office hours. We instituted office hours because our families said, let me know what we're going to teach, what you're going to teach, so that I can be a part of helping to do it. Beyond that, I just want to say a last word about school as community. We're employers. There are a lot of people that are part of what we consider our friendship family, and we are very proud of keeping all of our hourly workers working because we are part of the community. And so with help from T-Mobile and our building partner, Busy Bee, we went from preparing and having families come to our schools for tens of thousands of meals to actually being able to deliver those meals. And so when we think about schools, yes, we are delivering education. I think that's an important part of it, but also consider that our children need to still be able to eat. And so we're quite proud of being able to do that. So having families co-create, having students be able to eat. But we also have families, I'm surprised Felicia Owo didn't mention it, but I just want to give a shout out to a family, the Loftons. Mrs. Lofton and her first grader are creating masks for first responders. So we've got families that are nurses and educators, and so the Loftons are creating masks for them. They're creating masks for our food service workers that come in. And this, I think, is the most important part of school. It isn't just about English and math. It's about art, and it's about music, and it's about community service as well. And that is what we are able to prove is important, that when you have access, when you give opportunity, then people can participate in their environment. They can participate in society in a way that is unprecedented. So thank you, Jeannie. Thank you, Antonio. I'm looking forward to your
from my Amy. from Miami to DC. Thank you, Patricia, Brantley, Morrise, Harbour, Felicia, Owo, for being here and for your continued work. And we will be putting you in touch with all the people who had great questions. So look forward to connecting with you again soon. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
Antonio, this is an exciting discussion. I'm so glad that you're here to pick it up in similar and new directions. For those of you who don't know Antonio Roca, he's the Managing Director of Academica Virtual Education at Academica, if you want to follow them on Twitter. And he has helped build a state-of-the-art virtual program across the world, as well as a dual diploma program. And Antonio, we were talking about how ironic it was that here you've been building this very unique, you know, modest program, and yet you now are in the position to kind of turn that around and address everyone in the network. So tell us, first of all, like how you did that and what was entailed. When were you surprised, frankly?
Yeah, Jeannie, as you know, we've been working in the international arena and have partner schools in over 11 countries by offering our dual diploma program online for really nearly 10 years now. So we've been developing the virtual model to be able to provide live instruction to students around the world. And really, because of that, we were able to build upon that and continue and pivot in a very short period of time to what I think no one saw coming, which was, in our case, over 100,000 students going to remote live instruction, a completely new model, which hadn't been seen here in the United States in a very short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to, we saw early on, and I would say mid-February, really as a result of a hotspot in Milan in some of our partner schools and what they were experiencing outside of Milan in the first quarantine, to really start preparing here for what we saw as an eventuality that would arrive here in the United States. Although we hoped it wouldn't, we thought there was a very high probability that in fact it would. So the first thing we did is survey parents in February to understand what their connectivity issues were. Did they have a device? Did they not have a device? How we could prepare schools, our school leaders, to be able to provide those survey results and distribute devices before schools closed. So we were able to distribute thousands of devices prior to school closures and really be ready for the pivot to online learning within a few weeks prior to it occurring. So we were in Miami-Dade County in South Florida, schools closed on March 13th, and we opened on March 16th, that Monday. We closed on Friday and we opened on Monday. And we did it with a different model, which is remote live instruction. So all of our students report to class every single morning with their uniforms on, receive at least 4 hours of live instruction. They are taking courses, all of their core content, so math, science, English, language arts, but also all of the special areas and electives like art and music and physical education.
And 1 second, excuse me, because I should have asked you too. How many students, how many states?
Yeah, so we're in 11 states. We have over 100,000 students, and we have activated all of those schools online. So our students are receiving remote live instruction really across the country. And not to leave out also what's been happening in the international arena as well, but because not only are schools closed here, but they're also closed abroad. So us to be able to provide a continuity of education, not only domestically, but internationally, to our students has really been a watershed moment, I think, for online education here in the United States and really around the world.
How are you able to scale up? It's one of the questions from the audience. How are you able to scale up your efforts in different geographies, given the different curricular standards, et cetera? And on online learning, do you have any place where people don't have gadgets? And if so, how have you been dealing with that?
Yeah, what we did is, like I said, we started in February. So we had those critical 2 weeks before the first school closures on May that were announced on March 13th.
Okay.
So we used those 2 weeks to not only distribute thousands of devices while students were still in school. We were able to survey those students not only digitally, but also paper surveys, translate them into Spanish, translate them into French to make sure that we reached our communities. But then we also trained over 5,000 teachers on effective online learning, online teaching tools. We also prepared, we have a proprietary platform called Khaleja, and I think we'll show you a little bit of that a little bit later. But we made sure that the video conferencing technology that we were using also had the proper security protocols in place by default. So there was a lot of criticism regarding use of video conferencing technology to teach students. But I think it was incumbent on any organization that was going to use this type of technology to prepare properly. And we did that by defaulting to online waiting rooms, requiring students to log in, and then through Khaleja, we have secure authentication overlaid into the video conferencing platform so that only our students can enter the waiting room. So we're ensuring that there are no third parties that have unauthorized access into the classroom.
And I'm fascinated by the fact that you were able to do that with over 100,000 students. And okay, granted it's double, but Fairfax County, which has more funds, couldn't do that with a highly reputable so-called Blackboard EdTech, and kids had to go online. People were crashing the system with really pernicious people coming into classrooms. What's the difference? I mean, again, I'm not just trying to bash Fairfax County, but come on, guys, we've got to get this right for all students. So we need to be honest and say, why couldn't they do it? Why could you do it?
Right, and not to say we didn't have hiccups, right? We had hiccups, of course. When you pivot like that on such a large scale, there are problems that come up, but you deal with them. And I think that the teacher training was pivotal to help them understand. A lot of our teachers had never taught online before, so we paired teachers with a lot of experience in online learning with teachers that didn't have that didn't have any experience, and help them with classroom management tools, and we used the first 5-10 minutes, especially at the beginning of every classroom, kind of helping students log on, helping parents log on, having our IT staff ready, having open Zoom rooms for parents to come in if they had problems and weren't able to log on. But parents really, especially with the authentication in Khaleja, understood that as a result, sure, it was a little bit of a learning curve at the beginning, maybe the first day, maybe the first 2 days, but they realized that as a result of that authentication, as a result of that increased technology, their students were safe in the classroom. And the response from parents has been really remarkable, because we're all working from home, and this whole notion that parents should be homeschooling their kids, I think that a lot of parents reject that notion and really have a lot of solace and sense of pride that their students are learning online at least 4 hours a day with us, and that also, by the way, gives them time to work. As you know, I have
that's the live time, right?
That's the live time. That's correct. That's just that's the remote live instruction. That's the lifetime when they're with their teacher. As you know, I have three.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I have three children in charter schools, right? And I probably couldn't be speaking to you right now if they weren't in their classrooms with their teachers receiving instruction in a live format. But of course, that's just one piece. Then, of course, there's after school where they're using a variety of platforms, and whether it's Edmodo or Google Classroom or iReady, or to reinforce what they're learning and also be able to provide an assessment tool,
right,
so that we can show within Khaleja that our students are learning, right? We don't want to lose the opportunity, although testing in Florida has been suspended, as you know, but that doesn't mean that we don't want to understand or show that our students have been learning from day one, right? So we had a little bit.
Are you grading them and evaluating them?
Yes, we're grading them. Okay. We're evaluating them. We're because it's super important to show that, as Patricia was talking about, that online learning is happening and it's effective and it's remarkably robust and personable, and teachers know their students and understand, and we're using a whole host of breakout rooms to be able to do differentiated instruction. You know, it's important to say that in addition to remote live instruction and what's happening in the classroom, we wanted to make sure that our ESE students and our SPED students continued to receive counseling and the support that they needed. So we created confidential meeting rooms that students could receive those services as required by Florida law and federal law. So we created those areas to make sure that the continuity of services, not only of course through of education, but also those additional services that Patricia was talking about that are so important, that we continue to provide them. And to the point, as you know, we work with a lot of low-income students. As a matter of fact, we have more free and reduced lunch students. You know, U.S. News and World Report just came out with their report, and our schools were 80% of the top 10 charter high schools in state, 60% of the top 20 in the state, of all high schools in the state, and a large percent. As a matter of fact, we have the highest number of free and reduced lunch students represented in that top 50 than any other school district in the state of Florida. So we know what it is that when we talk about access, and that when we talk about the need to ensure that all of our students, and this is happening across all of our schools, in low-income communities, they're online, in Little Havana, in Alapata, so yeah, we have to work a little harder. We got to make sure that they have the access, they have the devices. And in some rural communities, obviously you've spoken a lot about this, and the need that what we need the government to do is provide broadband access. That's the highway and the infrastructure needed, because even in some rural communities where we're operating, even if we're able, and we've given out hotspots for those students to be able to be able to connect, but if there's only one cell tower in that county, doesn't matter how many hotspots you give them, they're still not going to be able to connect. So in those counties where we're not able to connect, we have teachers teleteaching. And what does that mean? That means that they're on the phone, one-on-one, calling every single student in their class and spending time on a rotating schedule to make sure that, is that as good as we would like it? Absolutely not. But we're not going to let the lack of a video conferencing technology or the lack of the ability to get online to get in the way of at least ensuring that we do our jobs. And our job is to educate.
So what's attendance like, Antonio?
So we've had a great result with attendance, and we have attendance exceeding 90% across all of our schools. We have many schools that are receiving 100% attendance. And it's really remarkable in a lot of respects, more than these schools were achieving pre-COVID, right, in brick and mortar context.
Yeah.
Because
I've been hearing that from a number of people, a handful of the innovative school districts too. Why is that?
Well, I think that number one, if you need to take care of grandma or grandpa or your parents, and you would otherwise not go to school because you needed to do that, now school comes to you.
Yeah.
Right now, you move, or if you're sick and otherwise wouldn't go to school, but now you're able to watch your teacher teach that lesson every morning and every afternoon from your home. So I think that the fact that the response and the adoption rate at our schools really shows that students want to learn. And if we provide them the tools and the means by which to learn and make it engaging and make it robust.
And you're creating a habit, right? You're creating a habit. You're reinforcing it. So it might start difficult by the time you get folks trained, by the time people get used to it. I think people are having a hard time throughout all of our series kind of grappling with how is it that people are attending? How do you know? And I want you to show us in a second how you know that they're attending, what you're watching. I'd also be remiss if I didn't share that the woman who actually helps make Verizon possible, Lydia Logan, is on, and she's sharing that a lot of rural districts are pushing out assignments that can be downloaded, done offline if you don't have a device. So as we're all racing in place to do this, where there's a will, there's a way, is what I'm
Absolutely. And Verizon's been a remarkable partner with us. You know, we've got 3 schools that received under the first round in partnership with Digital Promise and Verizon Innovative Learning Schools. They provided devices to 3 of our middle school, thousands of students, and now we're adding 4 more schools, thank you Verizon, to be able to that program. And obviously that helped immensely, especially in those schools, because those students were not only already used to accessing devices, but they also had the connectivity piece, which was incredibly important in order to be able to provide low-income families access to education. So I think that that's incredibly important. And, you know, when we take attendance, by the way, you know, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal the other day talking about what does being present mean in a lot of areas, and some means you log in once a day to some application. You do a little bit of iReady once a day, or maybe it's once a week, or maybe your parent calls and says that Johnny or Susan are doing their homework, and that's counted as present for purposes of attendance. When we talk about present, we talk about that a teacher has verified in a video feed that the student is sitting in the classroom every single day. So it's using, it's confirming.
It's not subjective.
Exactly, it's objective. We know the student is sitting in that classroom. We know the student is sitting in each and every classroom. We're inputting that data into our online gradebook like we would normally do in a brick and mortar context.
Okay.
You know, and I think it's super important, in addition to what we're educating, of course, but we also need to provide an avenue for students to be able to interact, right? So that's why it was super important for us to activate our clubs and National Honor Society and the Chess Club and FBLA. So all of that is happening after school. We're preparing, we created professional learning communities, as we all know, the College Board is proceeding with AP testing. Yeah. Students we're preparing for 3/4 of the year for a certain type of test. And then in March, they realized it's gonna be a completely different type of test. Obviously, a lot of students, that's real high stake tests, not only for GPA, but college admissions. Right. So we quickly pivoted across our schools and created a professional learning community so that AP teachers could get together and provide after-school tutoring to prepare our students for that exam. So we've got after-school tutoring going on every single day.
Okay, so let's show everybody what it looks like.
We
have a video to share, and then I don't know if you want to go more detail, but I think a lot of people are dying to know, how do you know, how are you managing it? And they can't have the visual. And I know you showed me the other day, and it was fabulous. So are we going to show virtual class or collegiate?
I think we're gonna,
Which one do you want us to show?
Well, you can show the virtual classroom so they can see a little bit about how it works,
okay.
and what a student sees and what a teacher sees.
Okay, great. So let's do the virtual class video, and then we'll keep the discussion going, because it is fascinating as we're queuing that up. I want you to also be thinking about, Antonio, some of the questions that we're getting. You know, given all the success you're having, do you think you're going to have kids coming back with or without learning gaps? I mean, do you think that let's say you come back to normal, although I'm hoping that we don't use this as an excuse, like we don't look at this as a way to go back to normal, we look at it as a way to go better. But do you envision having gaps, or do you think you can just pick up where you left off?
Well, okay.
Okay, that's good. Let's think about that answer, and then we'll look at the video. Get it?
Good morning, boys and girls. Let's go ahead and get started with our day. If you are ready, let me see 2 thumbs up.
What happened to Species A?
Species A thrived, like it kept on increasing.
Let me see your notes. Go ahead and show them to me in the camera. I want to see how you're doing. Oh my gosh, look at you all. Yes. Yes, great job.
I love it. A visual is worth 1,000 words. It really helps. And so you've got that feedback. And then tell us about Khaleja, because it is the platform that I think surpasses a lot of what I've seen.
We have a platform, Khaleja, which really is a curated marketplace for community, communication, connection to education, and content. And it's an area where all students come to, all principals and teachers come to, where we're able to share resources not only with our principals and our teachers, but students are able to access all of their online classrooms, online content, our LMS, our proctoring solution for testing, their email. It's a hub for all things education. And I think we have a short video, because
let's roll. Why don't we roll that too? And is that available to other people, or is that just an Academica?
Yeah, right now it's an Academica. It's an Academica product, but that, yes, it will, to answer your question, yes, it will be available to others to be able to implement across any type of school. And
did you have that before? Did you have it before?
We've been developing it for a while, and we had it in some pieces in some areas, but this really forced us to really launch it in a real meaningful way, and quite frankly also gave us an opportunity to do so.
So you really consolidated all those apps people keep mentioning. And I have a question for you about those because this has come up a few times. So I saw the Edmodos, and I know, you've got all the different stuff. By the way, Vills and Verizon and many of these apps, folks, are in our database at CER at edreform.com if you need to find them or get connected. But you put them all in one place. And I think one of the questions people keep asking us, Antonio, is, and you were talking before about phone calls, but are these things too high tech for people? There's a lot of people who are like, well, you know what? We need more low tech tools. And so I think folks are having a hard time distinguishing. Now, obviously not people in the classroom out there. You all know who you are and you're following it. But these things are kind of new. And so, is it a lot for them to learn? How did you curate them? And how much of these are delivery versus your own content?
I couldn't agree with you more. I don't think low tech is the way to go. And I think that really the adoption, the ones with the larger challenge are the adults. I think students are absolutely able, willing, and thrive with the online tools that we're providing, right? And I think that they live in that world more than we do. So I think that especially working with our teachers and creating professional development opportunities, and we work with Doral College, which is a nonprofit college that we created, which pulls and is a cooperation amongst all of our networks. They're creating not only a certification and endorsement specifically in online teaching within our Bachelor's of Education, but also creating professional development in this area that's available to all of our teachers so that they're able to get master plan points and continuing their CLE opportunities, because I think that this is the new normal, right? I think you cannot unring this bell. And I think we would be remiss as an organization not to properly plan for what the future looks like and what the fall looks like. And I think that over these next few months, we're going to be doubling down. We're going to be providing more professional development opportunities for our teachers, more professional development opportunities for our administrators to really prepare for what the fall brings. And whether the fall brings, which I think is unlikely, a going back to school 100% in brick and mortar, Khaleja is going to be here for good, right? And I think that's a good thing. I think that we're able to provide and transform education through a digital medium. It gives you another tool and another important tool on your tool belt as a teacher and as a school to be able to provide access and equity and engagement for students. And I think that we would be creating a huge disservice if we didn't capitalize on the opportunity to really be prepared for the future. And dare I say, next COVID-19 or something else, whether we're going back, we believe something in a blended format in the fall,
right?
Something that looks like 50% of the kids going an A day, 50% going a B day. And you have, so if you're A through L on an A day, you're showing up to brick and mortar school, while at last name M through Z is receiving remote live instruction. So we've already been preparing our facilities.
Or what about the parents, or what about, Antonio, the parents who say, I might be on an A or B day, but you know what? Johnny's not coming to school.
Absolutely.
I'm not comfortable. I have a compromised immune system, whatever. Or maybe we just decide to go stay with grandma for a couple months because she needs us. Will you still educate my child?
Absolutely.
And will the state of Florida here's the question, let you educate my child if my child is no longer sitting in Florida? That's like a big $100,000 question, maybe $100 million question.
Right. And that's going to be super important. And obviously we're in discussions with the Florida DOE because I think parents are going to demand options. and there's no reason not to give it to them. And whether, you know, the parents want to keep the modality of learning in this format, we should be able to provide them those tools, especially when you talk about remote live instruction, where students are receiving live. You're not just putting them to, they're learning synchronously. They're just not in the physical building. This is not just an and not that there's anything wrong with asynchronous learning. I think that asynchronous learning is also an important tool, especially for acceleration, to not hold back students. That if you can't offer a particular course because you only have 3 students interested in AP Computer Science, you shouldn't not offer those 3 students AP Computer Science. You need to put them on asynchronous learning, and you need to link them. Perhaps you've got another campus where you've got 10 or 15 or 20 students that are taking AP Computer Science, and you've got an AP Computer Science teacher, that you bring that live session to those students that are remote and not physically in those buildings.
How let me ask you this. How did you think about this? You built it yourself rather than buying. Did you look out there? There's someone, I don't know if you want to answer or not, contrast this to what Summit did. Did you look at all the other people and organizations doing things, or had you already been far down this road?
Yeah, well, we've been since we've been developing it and offering it in some form over many years. We had developed a lot of our tools, but that doesn't mean that we did not. And it's important to say we're video conferencing platform agnostic, right? Our friends at Verizon bought Blue Jeans recently, and we know that they did. You know, Khaleja works with Blue Jeans, right? And just like it would work with Zoom, just like it would work with any video conferencing platform. So I think it's important also to focus on those core areas that we've got expertise in. And I don't think you can build everything, right? I think that
you've already been doing personalized learning to a large extent, right? And individualized support.
That's correct.
And different programs. So those were things you were building over, what, 15 years?
Yeah, I would say about 10 years since we've been working in the international and online learning domestically for blended and here in the US. Okay. But I do think it's important so there are some third-party softwares that are available. You know, I just mentioned video conferencing and others that we use and capitalize on that, because I think it's important that we focus on what we know how to do well.
Right.
And yes,
do the rest.
We're a technology company too, but that's not our primary focus, right?
What about, so we have this question every single time, and I'll throw it out at you, and would love your feeling about this. And is it a big problem? What do you do when no one's watching the kids at home? And how big of a problem is that? Because there is a lot of debate about whether, there's just a lot of folks out there that none of this could ever happen with, and if they don't end up in school, somehow they're not educated. Though I'd argue if you see the recent NAEP report card, it suggests that just having kids in a classroom isn't necessarily getting them educated.
Yeah, I think that.
And are our kids safe at home? Like, bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they are. I mean, we live in the safest country, arguably anywhere. But I think that everything is not everything for everyone, right? I mean, I think that we need to provide choice, and that's what this movement is about, right? This movement is about offering choice to parents. And maybe it is that you're in brick and mortar half of the day and you're online the other half of the day, and maybe it is that you don't want to be asynchronous. You want remote live instruction, and I can go in the morning and I need to work in the afternoon and be asynchronous at night, or I want to stay all day online remote live instruction and be able to provide that because I have that ability in my house. But if I don't, and I'm a parent, we've also creating learning centers, right? So that students have a place to go, and working with an academic coach that's in that learning center along with a teacher, so that, because we know, we've heard this also, that students need some, parents want students, they need some place for students to go. So, we've been working with our facilities people on creating that classroom of the future, right? And what's that going to look like? And it doesn't look like the traditional classrooms that you and I are accustomed to, but they look perhaps more like a learning center, more like an area that students can gather and be online, receive remote live instruction, or go down to the next building or the next hallway and attend a class. So we really need to be able to offer all of that choice in a continuum of education that doesn't limit, this notion that we can't do this because some people don't want it. I think that a lot
of your schools are also 95, 96% free and reduced lunch?
Absolutely. We've got tons of our schools. The majority of our schools are high FRL, 80, 90, some 100% FRL. So, and also this notion, not that we don't have other schools too, but this notion that equity, that this is inequitable, that it's not reaching low-income communities is a fallacy. I think that we absolutely have the ability, if there's a will and a drive and a desire, to be able to reach every student. I think Pat was talking just about that, right, earlier, and the fact that engaging and creating, we've been using parent academies for years, right? A lot of our graduates, we've got, our graduation rates exceed 96, 97%. And most of them are first generation college. We're a college preparatory system, right? So most of our students are the first to go to college.
Right.
And we know if anything breaks the poverty cycle, it's that, right? If one member in that household goes to college, that will more profoundly affect that family than pretty much anything else.
And you have students going to college for the first time and then coming back to work for you. And I only know that because every time I get on a call with someone in your network, it's another student, someone who introduced themselves as an alumni. And
absolutely.
So there's a couple things that folks out there, maybe I wasn't clear about. So you help manage 200 charter schools, free public schools. In terms of the cost, it's obviously free. People are enrolled. Are you going to be able to cope with 20% reductions and whatever reductions are coming down the pike from public ed? And I raise that because you're already dealing with 20%, 25% less than most traditional public schools in charters?
That's correct. That's correct.
In particular, you don't get facilities funds.
We do get some capital outlay, but we don't participate in the full ad valorem taxation at the local millage rate at 100%. So we do get about 25% less funding than traditional public schools do. But yeah, I mean, the answer to the question is, yeah, we're going to deal with it. We're going to adapt and we're going to adjust because it's the reality. And we've been through this before, right? When there was the crisis in 2008, 2009, and 2010, we very quickly, Fernando Zulueta, our founder, quickly brought everybody together, and we worked with principals to work on budgets and slash budgets and found ways to. You
mean you didn't show up in Washington and demand that they write you big checks? I am shocked.
No, and not that we weren't out there talking about policy and advocacy and the importance of being able to provide equity and access to education, but we had to deal, we can't go in, we got to stay in the black, right? We've got to be able to operate effectively at a very high level. And sometimes that makes us have to take tough decisions, and anybody that's working in a high school knows that it's expensive to run AP, it's expensive to run dual enrollment. We're offering all of our students free dual enrollment courses in Doral College. So they have access to all of that. So sure, we'll need to pivot and we'll need to adjust. But I also think that there are big opportunities, as you mentioned them before, coming under the CARES Act to innovate, to find new ways. What does the future of the classroom look like? What does the K-12, the one that Betsy DeVos just issued yesterday, right? What's the new K-12 school going to look like?
Right.
And so I think that if we can build it and prove the model, I think that I'm hopeful that we'll be able to continue to accelerate and provide more access to more students across the country.
And do you think that if given the chance, you would be able to educate students even outside of the communities that you currently serve? I mean, let's say there are no boundaries, there is no zip code, and there is a student sitting not just in Florida or one of your states or Nevada, but maybe they're in Ohio, right? Maybe they are in Zimbabwe. We have someone joining us today. We have a few international people. Could you serve them if that money followed the kid, if they had that virtual backpack, Antonio?
Absolutely. You know, you and I have spoken about this, that we absolutely believe that the money belongs to the parent, and the money should follow the student and not necessarily a government organization. So we think we could do that. We think that creating a national accessible charter school it would really be a disruptor, and you would do that in many ways, right? You would obviously have a footprint in learning centers and a network of learning centers, and the ability to access the platform, access content. So I think that would be an amazing opportunity for the school of the future.
Well, it'd be great if we could bring back, this has been awesome, Antonio, if we could bring back maybe Pat and the friendship, maybe just Pat for now, to just help us close off. I love her thoughts based on the dialogue. Sometimes you hear a conversation, you go, oh, I would have loved to share that. So Pat, if you could turn your video on and come back, that would be great. But Antonio, what's the one thing that you want people to know about what you have learned at this point in time?
You know, I think that if there's one thing that we've learned is that teachers are remarkable individuals. They have an amazing amount of power. They're adept. They can adjust. Sometimes with a little cajoling, sure. You know, I told our teachers, you know, jump. I'm gonna catch you. It's gonna be all right. And the first day or two, but you know, there was a little bit of uneasiness getting used to a new platform, but their ability to pivot and adjust and adopt this modality and really make it their own, I think is one of the most remarkable things about this process, because I think students were probably easier to adapt to this because they're more used to it. The fact that we had, you know, over 5,000 teachers do it as well, I think is a testament to who they are. And I think we've heard a lot of parents say, I think teachers should make $1 million. And because now they see exactly what's happening.
Yeah. Pat, what's your thoughts about that? Welcome back.
So thank you. I think that my sort of closing thought is this: school is not a place, right? School is, it's an action, it's an activity, it is a part of life, it is critically important, but it is not a place. And we have proven that we can have school from anywhere. I have educators who like to say the building is closed, but school is in session. And so I think we have to remember that school must be in session. Our children get older every day. They get closer to living their lives as adults, and we need to make sure we are giving them the tools so that they can bring about a better world for the rest of us. So school is in session.
And I think it's so exciting. It gives me chills when you guys both are talking, and the folks that have been involved in this. It is happening because there are educators out there that are willing to make that shift and work. And I think one of the reasons that we continue to be super excited about institutions that have flexibility and money is driven to that local level is because they tend to be able to move much more quickly. No, I'm not going to pull punches. They do move more quickly than those that can't. And so we will continue to beat the drum, sound the horn, every other silly analogy out there, to support you, to promote you and the others that are doing great work, regardless of whether they're traditional, public, charter, or private. Bring them to our attention, but we absolutely have to do this work, and going and looking at those that are doing it is clearly one way. So I suspect you both are going to get a lot of calls, visits, and people who want to steal you, which is a good thing. And I hope you will share with us your progress along the way. And we will certainly be sharing more stories of other groups, networks, schools that are making learning happen for all students. There's just no excuse. School is a verb, as Julie Young said last week, and as you've just repeated, Pat. So Patricia, Brantley, Friendship, Antonio Roca, last word as we depart.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the advocacy work that you do on behalf of all of us. I think that it's incumbent upon us more than ever, I think, to show that closing schools and not providing education is clearly not the way to do it. And we need to continue to push ourselves as organizations to adapt and provide a better choice. And I think parents, when you provide a better choice, and you're held accountable to that, to those parents, to those customers, I think that really revolutionizes education and provides more access and equity than anything that's arguably been done in the last 100 years nearly of public education as we know it in the United States.
It's time. I'm so happy you guys were here. It makes me want to wake up in the morning knowing you're out there and to continue in the fight. So thank you to everyone who joined us. Wow, huge numbers. Grateful to you all. And please let us know how we can be responsive to what you're doing. And please, please, please read The Future of School and join the effort. Morrise, thank you. Felicia and all. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Don't forget to join us next week, same time, same place, with two additional extraordinary people, Brian Britton from National Heritage Academies and Amy Valentine from The Future of School. And we will be in touch. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.